Welcome back. The socialists are on the march. The far left just claimed another Democrat scalp. A 29-year-old Democratic Socialist just beat one of the party's longest-serving members of Congress in Colorado, extending a string of victories for the Democratic Socialists of America.
To Donald Trump and the oligarchy, we will not wait! We will not wait to abolish ICE and pass Medicare for all! We will not wait to put an end to the politics of the past, to get big money out of our politics, and to reject corporate PAC. And no, we will not wait to end the genocide in Palestine. This is a movement, and we are just getting started.
Okay, so we talked about this yesterday, and it's only appropriate to follow up now that we have results from that race. Melat Kiros, she is angry there, and she's certainly doing what the one thing I'll say about the Democratic Socialist candidates, they speak their mind and they tell you what they want to do. They are not sugarcoating it in any way. And what scares me about that is that people hear that and they are still voting for them, which means there is a broad swath of people in this country, and I would say broad enough that they're popping up in the way that they are, these candidates, and winning, that subscribe to her view of what America should look like. And that, to me, is scary, Marcus.
Well, I'm not going to wait to remind her there was only 48,000 people. And I'm not going to wait to remind her that she's essentially going to crush the Democratic Party as it exists today. Because while Republicans need to get their message right, how all of us do, on affordability and all the things leading into the midterm, what is clear to me, very clear to me, is that the divisiveness inside of that party is going to eat it alive in the midterms. That sort of rhetoric isn't going to work, and I think the Democrats are starting to say, the core original Democrats are starting to say,
but who
too much.
has more power right now? Because they're winning races, and even if the core Democrats start to say, okay, this is a little too much, and I'm not going to go on board with that just because you're winning races, they will only alienate themselves. And so if they cannibalize themselves in that way, where do we end up?
Then they lose again. Then they lose again.
Well, I think like with AOC at the start of this, you know, she was outside of the Democratic Party, but she got very powerful and got money behind her. So, you know, you'd say that the mainstream Democratic Party will have more funding. So they'll be able to beat this internal rift. They'll be able to beat the socialists. But I think they've shown that they can get so strong, get the backing in AOC or Mamdani. They're going to become mainstream. So I think that the problem we have is who's buying the message that they're, you know, this like violent, you know, change the country, completely tear it down. Like if anyone reads what the DSA stands for, it's un-American, just completely un-American. So she comes over from Ethiopia and wants to change this country.
And anti-Semitic.
So to me, this has been something that's been brewing for a long time, and it's been a dirty little secret within the party that you have a lot of money backing people like this, but they haven't been able to emerge on the political stage because it still was a little taboo. But all of a sudden, in a post-Biden, Kamala Harris era, the stage has been set to kind of have certain people at least stand up and embrace this and be vocal about it. And I go back to the money angle of it because that really is important. You brought that up with AOC. And so I just wonder, how many more are we going to, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You try to whack one here and someone's popping up there. How much more of this, Dagan, do you think that we're going to see?
You could see a lot more of it, but I want to make every member of the Democrat Party who's in power, who's in office, wear that messaging like a cheap T-shirt made in China. That it's not Palestine, it's Gaza. They hate the Jews and they hate America. She has said point blank, America had 9/11 coming. That Medicare for all, okay, we're deep in debt, on the precipice of longer term interest rates going up. That means she chooses that over home ownership for people. She's not interested in making sure that people can borrow money at a reasonable rate. All you need to do is just take exactly what she says. She wants to make sure that people can flood the border, that people can flood into this country. She doesn't believe in laws. We already lived through 4 years of that, and the American people voted it down. They lived through the horrors of, you know, just cities being swamped. It was educational, societal destruction. Make the Democrats own that. And we will, it's not just talk, it's walk, because we can watch New York City. It's why we focus so much on Mamdani. We're going to be able to see what happens to this city. We will be able to see the horrors that he rains down upon the nation's biggest metropolis just through his policies, and it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
And it's not just a city, it will be a nation if you let these people rise to power.
I don't need to see it, Taylor, but maybe some people do, to understand the youth that don't necessarily have more experience, life experience, haven't seen or lived through certain aspects of different situations unfolding, that need to see this to understand. But there are those people out there too that are, pretty wealthy, but they consider themselves righteous. That's sort of the voter that he got here, like these young, wealthy kids supported by their parents who believe in this idea of social justice and equality for all.
To justify who they are.
But many people are going to have to suffer as a result of that.
They're wealthy because of their parents, by the way,
Yes.
just so we're clear.
And whose parents didn't talk to them that they got wealthy through the benefits of capitalism. They were so excited about getting them into the next cool private school that they didn't think long-term what they were teaching their children about capitalism. And so here we are. I come on both sides of this. You guys know all my young friends from law school, Mamdani, love him. They love socialism. They put out a post saying, this is just the beginning, back down, we're coming for you. They are angry. And so I think what this makes me question is, I don't know if it's pro-socialism or anti-democratic establishment. And I just don't know if they're voting out. When people voted for Hillary because they
Lack
were
of a better
perceived
choice.
of the lesser of two evils relative to Trump. And so I don't know if those people are just angry at the Democrat Party and this is a nice, fun alternative, or if they really are pro-socialism. And then I think that's the question we're going to have to weigh.
All right, we'll be right back.